Hello, my name is Julia Barzyk, and I'd like to welcome you to this Wise Investigator course on unlocking DoD funding for university researchers. So let's get started. So this course is divided into 8 lessons, and I'm going to go through them very quickly here to give you a preview. So first we're going to talk about why you may want to consider DoD funding for your research. I will then describe the DoD approach to funding. Then I'll provide an overview of DoD funding organizations and then an overview of DoD programs. We will then go through how you can search for DoD funding and then how you can learn what DoD has already funded. We will talk about connecting with people at DoD, and then we'll talk about taking the next steps towards DoD funding. So throughout this course, I am going to give you 3 keys, 3 important keys that I believe will help you. And the first one is the key to making DoD funding actually easier to win than funding from other funders. Okay, so what is the key that you need to know to make winning DoD funding relatively easier? We are also going to talk about a key to connecting with the right people, the right collaborators for you that will match up with your research interests, connecting with people who are performing research in DoD labs, who are very engaged and likely eager to chat with you about collaboration and potential funding. So there's a key that I'm going to give you here. And then in lesson 4, I will give you the key to winning big DoD awards. So stay tuned through all of this, and as you work your way through, you're going to get to all 3 of those keys. Okay, so who am I? Well, I'm Julia Barzyk, and before I founded Wise Investigator, which is a company that helps university researchers get funding, I served as a program manager at the U.S. Army Research Office. I managed a portfolio of research in geoscience and civil engineering. This was a basic research program. And I also had management responsibilities for URI programs, that's University Research Initiatives. I'm going to use some acronyms here and tell you what those are, but all the acronyms will be defined throughout the course, so don't worry about that. But that's MURI, PCASE, and DURIP. And I also led the DEP score program for the Army, and I was at ARO for 10 years. So everything that I am teaching you in this course is based off of that experience, as well as the experience I've had working with clients and learning, where they struggle in trying to break into DoD. But I will say that this is not official guidance. I'm going to tell you a lot about how things generally have been run and how they are currently run with these programs and these organizations, but keep in mind that things are changing. So always look to current guidance, current announcements, so you make sure that you get the most current and most accurate information. All right, so why might you want to consider DoD funding? Well, I think there are quite a few reasons. So DoD does support high-risk research, and this is something that you will probably be encouraged by, because certainly you have research ideas that you feel are worth pursuing, but you may not have preliminary data or much preliminary data. There may be something else about what you want to do that causes people to say, oh, this is high risk, right? We're not ready to put money on this. And DoD is a place where you may be able to get that work supported. So this is a huge reason to have an interest in pursuing DoD funding. DoD also supports interdisciplinary research. And the reason for this is that many programs throughout DoD are not based on disciplinary areas, but they are based on an area that they're based around solving a particular problem. So they may have a certain disciplinary alignment, but they have a different organizational structure that allows for interdisciplinary research to find a home oftentimes much more easily than in an organization where things are broken down again by traditional discipline. And we do know that a lot of really good ideas that are going to move us forward as a society, they're going to move our various disciplines forward, they are at the interface of two or more disciplines. So this is another huge reason to pursue DoD funding if you're working in an area that could be considered interdisciplinary. Also, there are routes for your work to be transitioned. You know, your basic research or a little bit more applied research you may be doing, when it's funded by DoD, it could have a path towards eventually becoming a fielded technology. And this is something that can be really rewarding for PIs when they have the opportunity to be part of and then, you know, eventually witness something that they had the original idea for become something that's useful to people in the real world. So this is another reason. Now, also, some programs have relatively high acceptance rates. So this is another reason to pursue DoD funding. Now, let's, though, consider some of the challenges around DoD funding, because this all sounds good, but we know that folks have had challenges. Now, the biggest one I hear is that it can be seen as hard to break into DoD funding. And we're going to talk about why that is and how we can get through that, right? Also, the websites and program organization can be difficult to navigate. When you go to the NSF website, it's really well organized and you can generally find what you need there. It's user-friendly. But as we'll see through this course, when we work our way through the various websites for the organizations and even descriptions of programs, it can be a little bit cumbersome. It can be a little bit tedious. So this does not make it easy always to find the information that you need, but that's the downside, but there's actually an upside to that. So we'll talk about that. Also, there are research security concerns. Even before I would say research security concerns, there are concerns about eligibility. So there are some early career programs that require the applicant to be a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen, but there is at least one that does not. And as far as research security, the guidelines related to this are changing frequently. And I would advise everyone who is eligible to apply for DoD funding to go ahead and do that. And do not anticipate that you will have any problems. Most likely you will not. If you do have some concerns, always address those to your employer, because when an award is made to support your research from the government, it's not made to you personally, it's made to your employer. So that's who you should direct any concerns that you have. It's not unreasonable that you would have concerns, but I don't believe that this is a reason for you not to pursue these opportunities. So the goals the goals of this course, well, the number one overarching goal here is to demystify DoD funding for university researchers. And how we're going to do that, this is basically going through an outline once again of what I showed a couple slides ago, but to go a little bit deeper into it here. So we're first going to explain the why behind the DoD funding process. So that's the part that we're calling the DoD approach to funding. And this is most important it's really the most important, I would say, of all of the lessons. And we're putting this first because once you understand the why of something, a lot of other pieces will fall into place. So I want to make this clear from the outset. So we're going to cover that. Now, we also will provide an overview of DoD funding organizations. And this is not going to be comprehensive. That would take way too long, but I will provide an overview of the major DoD funding organizations that you've probably heard of, but maybe you haven't heard of some of them. And in any case, this will cover most of the orgs that you could get funding from or through. Also, I will cover an overview of the DoD funding programs that are most common. So again, this will not cover all DoD funding programs for research, but it will cover the most common and most, important ones. So I will also show you how to search for DoD funding opportunities, because this is very important to actually getting to the announcements and understanding what you need to, sometimes there are multiple pieces of information that you need to gather to have a complete picture of an opportunity. So I will go through what those pieces are and help you understand how to piece them together so you could have a full picture, again, of an opportunity. And we will also cover how you can search for what DoD has funded. So these are things that have been already supported. They're awards that have already been made. And this is just a good thing to give you context to understand where is DoD really putting their money. How does that line up with what's in the announcement? And you can learn, kind of like have a little bit deeper insight sometimes into the kinds of topics they actually are putting their money behind. And very importantly, from these results, you can work your way to contact information, names and contact information for people who may be able to help guide you towards the opportunities. So this leads into the next topic we need to cover, which is showing you how to connect with people at DoD. This is very, very important. You're going to need to be having conversations if you want to be successful with this. And I will also explain what the next steps will be for you to pursue the DoD funding. So the why for my why for providing this training, what do I feel called to share with you? What do I want to accomplish here? I want to get more PIs and more institutions engaged with the DoD research and development enterprise. This was an important part of my job when I was with a DoD funding organization, and I still consider it something important for me to do now, both for the defense community and for our community of scientists, engineers, and researchers in the nation more broadly. These are great opportunities. Everyone should have access to them, and DoD is going to clearly benefit when more people are engaged with their research and development enterprise. So I hope that this training can play a part in doing that. Further, I would love to see more high-risk research supported. As a former program manager, high-risk research, being able to support that was a very gratifying, a very rewarding part of my job when I could recommend that type of a proposal for funding and it would be approved and funded and that work would get done. And not surprisingly, those were some of the proposals that ended up 3-5 years later really getting a lot of attention for having completed and achieved some really groundbreaking results, because again, it was high-risk research and it did work out, right? So I would love to see more research like that supported. Also, it's really kind of same thing here with the interdisciplinary research. These are good ideas. They should be pursued, right? So I hope that this course can help people getting these interdisciplinary ideas supported too. And I would like to encourage anyone who's engaged with this course, who's in a leadership position at their institution, to encourage the support of single PIs to win funding from DoD, because the best way into DoD is with these single PI awards. So I hope that this course is going to lay context so that folks can understand why it is worth investing in supporting the single PI, even to win a smaller type of award, because of the downstream effects of that, which can be very significant. Okay, so one thing that I'm gonna make myself a little smaller here. Okay, that I would like you to keep in mind throughout this entire course is what I call the research funding process. So let's go ahead and take a look at this timeline. So this timeline starts with you having your existence in the world, right? And you do exist in the world if you're watching this. But for people to be able to find you and know that you exist in the world and confirm that you exist in the world, you're going to want to have some very, very basic online presence. And I recommend that this is usually on LinkedIn. That's certainly not the only place you can do it, but it's generally an easy place for PIs to get started. So you want to be able to be findable. And we do search for other people now online. That's how we do that. So you're going to also have an opportunity search. So that would be the next step along this timeline. You will then have conversations with funders, and then you will go into a pre-proposal process. This process could be formal or it could be informal. Then you will do proposal writing, if this is progressing right towards you're making a submission. Proposal writing, you're very familiar with that, and package submission is also something that you would be familiar with. In many cases, when people think about getting funding, they're really kind of thinking of these two parts alone, right? But again, there's a lot more on the timeline. And then there will be a decision, and you will either perform the funded research if you got an acceptance and you got funded, or you should be developing a plan B if you got not good news. So what I want to highlight here is that, let's go there. There we go. The grant writing is only a small fraction of what you need to be doing in this whole research funding process, right? So there's a whole lot of everything else, and that was everything else on the timeline on the last slide, except for proposal preparation and submission. So as we work our way through this course, I would like you to keep in mind the timeline and this pie chart, because much of what I'm going to be talking about is the everything else. And this is very important, especially for DoD. So please keep that in mind throughout, and I will see you in the next lesson where we will talk about the DoD approach to funding.